Welcome to Career and Leadership Real Talk, the no-nonsense guide for ambitious managers who want to have more impact and progress their career. I'm Pamela Langan, a job search coach and expert CV writer specialising in helping frustrated professionals land the jobs and pay rises they know they deserve.
And I'm Jackie Jagger, a leadership and mindset coach specialising in helping newly promoted and new to role leaders to avoid the dickhead trap and lead with confidence. Between us, we've helped hundreds of leaders and managers to find new roles, take ownership of their careers, and handle the challenges that job searches and leadership responsibility inevitably bring. And now we're joining forces to share with you what we know has worked for our clients.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode, which is our final episode for 2025. And this year has gone so quickly. And we couldn't quite believe that we were at the stage of recording our final episode. So, as is fitting towards the end of the year, we're going to be focusing on reflecting on the year that has gone. And for our first episode of next year, we will then be focusing on looking ahead, which is the theme that we've had for the end of the last couple of years, but we're going to do it in a slightly different format this year. So, a format that I use regularly with clients when we're reflecting back and thinking about what they want is reflect, connect, and commit. And what we mean by that is reflect back and think about what's been happening, then think about connecting with what do you want more of, what do you want to change, and then finally commit to action, because unless you're going to commit to action, then nothing will actually change. So this episode is going to be Pam and I doing a bit of our own reflection on 2025 and sharing some of the questions that we use with clients and some of that format. And we would love to hear some of your own reflections. We will have a resource available in the show notes. Pam, how quickly has 2025 zipped by?
Oh, wow. I literally cannot believe that we are at the end of this year. But what a year it's been. This is by far my best year. I think it's our best year working together, working with our clients, and just growing from a personal perspective. I feel like this year has been a huge year for me from a personal growth perspective.
Absolutely. And we were talking, weren't we, the other day, that we couldn't have believed, if we'd have gone back to this time last year, we couldn't believe some of the things that have come about and have happened during the course of the last 12 months. And I think just taking that time, we talk so often about reflection when different episodes, we talk about creative thinking time, but it's really been us prompting that with each other over the last week or so. It's gone, wow, 2025 has been quite the year. So our first section when it comes to reflecting back is to encourage people to think about successes and wins. And the reason that we really encourage this is because people don't learn enough from their successes and what's gone well, typically, do they? That's certainly my observation, is that people are very keen to jump to, what do I want to change? What's gone wrong? What hasn't gone the way I wanted? And what do I need to do differently? But don't always spend the time on what's gone well, what am I proud of, what's working for me.
Yeah, I think it's human nature to just beat yourself up on the things that have gone wrong and feel like they're the things that you really need to learn from. But actually, I think what we've done this year is spun that around and gone, what are we doing well and what can we build on? And I have to say, there's no coincidence that I feel like this has been one of my best years. And it's a year that I've probably reflected the most in. And there's no coincidence there.
That's such an interesting observation. And yeah, I think for me as well, it's been really interesting, the process of deciding which questions we're going to include in the download, because there are so many different options of ways that people can reflect and think about what's gone well. So some of the questions that you'll see if you download the sheet are, what's one moment where you felt genuinely proud of how you handled something? So not necessarily the biggest achievement or the biggest win, but just something that you've been really pleased with how you handled something. And that might seem quite a simple question, but I think it's those things that often get lost in the mix. Then another is, what's something that maybe scared you or felt challenging? How did that actually turn out? And that's very much about reflecting on, where have you challenged yourself? How have you grown from the ways that you've challenged yourself. And I think people find it so hard to say that word and feel proud of themselves and to acknowledge successes. But there's another question, which is the one I'm going to choose to ask to you from this section, which is, what is a skill or capability you've developed this year that you didn't see coming at the start of the year?
Oh, that's a good question. My answer to that would probably be around the work that I've been doing on LinkedIn. So, one of the key things for me is posting on LinkedIn to raise awareness of different things, to let people know how we can support them, and generally to make as much impact as possible. But LinkedIn, like all the social platforms, it can be tricky to get your head around how to use it, and coming up with all of the ideas around what will resonate with people. What do people want to read? At the start of this year, I was like, do you know what? From a marketing perspective, you can talk about your services and all of that kind of stuff. But what do people really want to know about? So I thought, I have got so many client stories. I am just going to share a different one each week. And along with that story, not just like this is the situation this person was in, this is also how they resolved that situation and where they are now. And wow, that has really taken off, because that's what people want to hear. They're less interested in these are the services and I'm a career coach. They want to know the results. They want to see how other people have been in their situation and being able to get out of those situations or gain the confidence to really move forward. And I feel like my LinkedIn profile has exploded this year. At one point in the year, I was getting almost 1 million impressions a week. And that is just absolutely like huge, because it's not just about more people seeing my profile. It's actually about the impact, because that's generated so many more messages into my inbox. I've been able to support people. I've been able to chat with people. I've been able to understand more about what people are struggling with, which then has also helped shape the rest of the content that I put out. So I feel like that is a skill that I've definitely developed, like understanding what people need to hear about, what they want to read about in order to help them move forward.
I think there's two things that I would observe around that, because I've been along for the ride and seeing you getting taking the mickey about you being an influencer now, and are you going to still stay friends with me? But I think two things I would observe. So one is LinkedIn was not new to you. You were already consistent on LinkedIn. You had been on LinkedIn, had a presence, had been there for quite some time, and you were experimenting and willing to try something new. And I think that in itself is a real lesson in terms of a success and developing further capability, is that willingness to take a risk or try something, experiment, which is not easy to do because you've been there and you've been doing quite a good job for quite a prolonged period. And I think the other thing I would observe is the stuff that really took off was stuff that really struck an emotional chord for your actual clients and potential clients. So they were really relatable stories. And in particular, there've been a number of episodes that we've done on the podcast that have come off the back. So people feeling that they were struggling with ageism when they were experienced candidates and not being treated in necessarily the greatest of ways during the job search process, feeling overlooked. And we did an episode on that whole thing of feeling overlooked in their job search. And I think it's something that I talk a lot in my leadership coaching work is, if you want people to do something, then they've got to feel something first. And I think the stories that you shared were just so relatable. And that's why they got the reaction that they did, was they really provoked that emotion. And again, I think that's a really interesting thing that you can take as learning from the things that have gone really well, is the fact that you've then understood that and been able to repeat that and find ways to make that work for you. So I think it just goes to show the power of reflecting and what you can take from learning about your successes. So take us through the questions then around learnings and insights. So how can people reflect on some of the things that perhaps haven't gone as brilliantly or have felt more challenging, which is maybe where they'd naturally lean to start, but we'd encourage you to definitely start with your successes and wins and then come to these.
Yeah, so this is a great section, but like you say, it needs to come after the successes and wins. So the first question would be, what's one assumption or belief you had about yourself, work, or career that's changed this year, or you've realized wasn't true? I think that is a real key one. And also, what pattern keeps showing up in situations that drain your energy? Another great one, because is it meetings? Is it specific people? Is it the type of work that you're doing? What is the pattern? And if you're feeling that way, if your energy is drained all of the time, then there's a pattern somewhere. And it's good to think about that.
So the reason that's in there is because I've had so many conversations in the last month or 6 weeks with leaders who are coming to the end of the year, who are feeling tired, who are feeling drained. And so that's something that I really encourage people to reflect on, is what's sustainable for you, what has been energizing, but also what has been draining, and how do you manage and limit the things that are draining, and how do you make sure you get more of the stuff that energizes into your life, not just within your working life, but within life more generally.
Yeah, definitely. And there's two other questions in this section, and I'm going to ask one directly to you. But before I do, the next question is, what feedback, formal or informal, has stuck with you this year? Do you want to act on it or let it go? I think that is a real key one and a real honest moment to have with yourself. And then, question to you, Jackie. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the start of this year, what would it be?
Oh, I always find these ones really interesting, of thinking about going back to younger you or past you. And I think probably, if I think back, so 12 months ago, I was just about to fly to Australia. I had Christmas and New Year with my dad, who lives there, which was an amazing time. But I didn't enjoy it as much as I could, because I was really already thinking ahead to coming back. And obviously, being self-employed, I was very mindful that I had this whole month where I wasn't going to be working. I couldn't do any client work, even if people wanted coaching, because the time difference meant that the clocks weren't going to work to make that happen. And I think if I could go back, the advice I would give would be to just chill a bit and trust myself to find my way through, because I was really putting pressure on myself to come back from Australia with my plan for the year set out and with everything organized and content written and all the ideas for the podcast set out and what have you. And I think I pushed more than I needed to. And what I've learned, if I reflect back over a longer period, is that very often my greatest successes come when I'm feeling like I have got space to be creative, and not when I'm trying to force it. So, yeah, for me, it would have been to have probably enjoyed that time more, because what an amazing opportunity to be in the sun for a whole month over Christmas and New Year and have time with family, but to chill a little bit more on the work stuff, because it has been an incredible year work wise. I had nothing to worry about, but I didn't feel like that. And so I was really trying to push and get stuff done. And probably 80% of the work that I tried to do while I was there just went nowhere and nothing happened with it. So I could have just been chilling and enjoying the sun.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing to think about, isn't it? Like being present in the moment, because we're constantly thinking about what's next and what's going to happen rather than enjoying that moment. And you do kick yourself, don't you, later on when you think, why didn't I just chill in that moment? But can we just take a second to think about you going to Australia for a whole month? Like it was nearly 12 months ago, and it feels like it could have easily been like a month or two ago. Like this year really has flown, hasn't it?
It absolutely has. Yeah. And I think there's a phrase I love, which is let it be easy. And it's a really helpful reminder for me, I find, because I'm the kind of person who has often felt like I have to work hard to earn a result, and a result only really counts if I've had to work hard to achieve it. And that's not actually the case. And I think across the course of my career, I've definitely made things harder for myself by having this mindset of everything has to be hard work. And so I've got to be head down at a million miles an hour all the time. And like I say, actually, a lot of the high points of my career have not come from that. They've come from being in the right place at the right time, having a good conversation, being creative and having the space and coming up with an idea rather than from that kind of head down million miles an hour type approach. So that is a reminder that it's really useful because you've asked me that question that I need to take into 2026. So thank you for choosing that one.
Yeah, I think that flow state is just so important, isn't it? I think even if you're listening to this, like most people will agree, if they give themselves that time and the space to really think about things, and I'm not talking like hours or weeks, like it's just making sure that you allocate that time to reflect, to think, to plan things out, just to take a moment to pause. And if you can do things from that flow state, you will achieve more, you'll do things better, you'll feel better, you won't get burnt out. It just makes all the difference, doesn't it?
And I think sometimes just choosing to do less than you are capable of, to go for a walk rather than to, again, I think for me, I've really struggled sometimes with that balance of, I'm okay, I'm going to have some time away from the desk now, but my mind is still switched on to work. And so I think often, again, going back to the previous question about managing your energy and what makes you feel good and energizes versus drains, that for me, just a lesson that I need to keep being reminded of is to just do nothing sometimes, to go for a walk and not go for a walk with the intention of figuring out some work problem that is challenging me, but to go for a walk and just be outdoors with a blue sky. Like the older I get, the more I'm like, all I need in life to feel good is a blue sky. That's it. That's all I need.
A blue sky is always helpful. But just one thing that you said there, and I'm definitely going to use this as a reflection prompt, is the let it be easy. Because when you said that, and I thought it back just then, it made me feel a little bit uneasy in my stomach, and it almost like made my stomach flip over a little bit. And I was like, oh, wow. So I've just written that down. So I am going to reflect on that. Like, why did that make me feel uneasy? How can I let things be easy in 2026? Because that's when I know if I'm working in my flow state, that's where I have the most impact for me and for my clients. So that is definitely one I'm going to take away from this episode.
And I felt very similar when I first heard it. And that's probably why it's one that I keep coming back to. And I think certainly for me, part of why I felt a bit uneasy was almost like it feels like cheating. It feels like if I haven't actually worked hard, I haven't really achieved. So even if I achieve something that feels like a tick in the box, it feels, unless I've done it the hard way, unless I've slugged my guts out, I don't really deserve it. And I think deserve is such an emotionally charged word. And I remember the first time that I got to that realization of kind of, oh, that's probably where that's coming from for me, certainly, is that aspect of I feel like I have to work really hard to deserve an opportunity or an achievement. And letting something be easy feels the opposite to that, feels like cheating, feels like I'm not doing justice to what I could be doing. But time and time again, I've had it proved back to me that I'm just being ridiculous. And life is far more fun, far more just easier when you just let it be that way. And that's not to say that I don't have a good work ethic. It's not to say that I have to lower my standards or not care about the quality of what I'm doing or what I'm putting out there. I can let go of feeling the need to work hard and find ways to make things easier and more fun and more enjoyable.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it's the perfect time to move to the final section, which is our career reality check. And we've got a couple of questions there, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. And this can either feel pretty good and sometimes help draw your attention to, okay, yeah, things really have moved in the way that perhaps it has been for us in the last couple of weeks as we've reflected. but also could be the reality check from the sense of, okay, I am actually really, how long am I going to tolerate if it's not where I want it to be? So first off is just to ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your career working for you right now? If 10 is the perfect career where every day is energizing and fun and enjoyable, and 1 is an absolute nightmare and the complete opposite, where on that scale are you? And why? What is it that's driving that score? Is that about the role? Is that about the organization? Is that about your manager? Is that about you not having enough stuff for you in your life alongside your career? So check in, understand what the score is and why. And then, question I'm going to ask you, Pam, what part of your job energizes you the most?
Oh, that is a great question. And I think the part of my job that really does bring the energy for me is when I'm working with clients. So when I've got that space to do the one-to-one stuff and I can help people really understand the value that they bring. Because lots of the clients that I work with, they know they're good at what they do. They just don't know how to articulate it. So they get caught up in all of the application processes and they feel like they haven't got a voice within their job search and all the rest of it. And for me, being able to help them pull out all of those key elements of what they can bring, what they can deliver, how they add value, how a company can get a return on investment from employing them, and seeing the change in them when all of a sudden it all comes together and they're like, that is me. That's exactly what I do. And then they can take that forward and they can articulate it in a way that makes the interviewer stand up and go, yeah, we're going to give you the offer because you're the right person for us. And they always say to me, that was so easy. But that is the bit that energizes me, making it easy for people, because when they found it so difficult in the past and we can just turn that around, that is the most rewarding part, I think, of what I do.
And I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Because incredibly talented candidates, in your case, leaders, in my case, can find things really hard. And without that outside perspective, they don't know what to change. It can feel so frustrating. And I remember back in the day when I was looking for a role and I was struggling at that point to get opportunities to get in front of people. And I remember that sense of almost, oh, I'm so frustrated. I know that I've got value, but I didn't have someone like you in my corner. And I really struggled to understand how can I articulate that. And yet you, as that kind of objective person, can really support them to see that inside themselves. And more importantly, to be able to articulate and demonstrate that in a way that is going to get them the offers that they actually really want. And I think there's such a difference in terms of when people are approaching recruitment processes in that way that we always talk about of two-way, where they understand the value and they show up in that way, versus when there's that kind of desperation of, I really want something, but I'm not quite sure how to make it work or how to get that across. So yeah, I can totally see why that is so meaningful for you. And on the flip side, I think another good question to ask yourself is, what part of your role or career makes you want to take a break, fake a Wi-Fi issue, just hit the reset button? Because I think that's the flip side. And I think when people know what energizes them and know what really doesn't, then if you are looking at making a change or you are looking at just making some tweaks, then you can really understand what to dial up and what might be preventing. And in my case, 100% the bit that I want to dial down is anything admin related. I'm completely in your corner. Give me a coaching conversation any day. Any admin, that is complete disinterest in detail from me.
Yeah, I feel your pain with that. I think mine is my account. Like I could quite happily give up the account to someone else. But do you know what? Before we move on to the last bit, I want to ask you what part of your job energizes you the most?
I would say, and as I think back over this year, it's very similar. I think the bit that I find really energizing is I get to spot the brilliance in people that they don't quite believe in for themselves yet. And so for me, that bit I find really exciting, of where I can see people start to have those realizations and start to see themselves the way that I see them. Because when they change how they see themselves, they change how they show up in their leadership role, they change the degree of impact that they have different conversations. And I'm just thinking back to a couple of clients. And I remember one client, we talked about the difference. So we'd worked together for 6 months across the course of this year. And I remember having that conversation of, where was your confidence when we started working together? And she said it was about a 3. And where is it now? And she was like, about an 8.5. And for me, that degree of difference that is possible from a relatively short amount of time of us actually having those conversations of 60, 90 minutes a month, to have that degree of difference in terms of that self-belief, and to be the person that's, oh, I can spot it, I can see what's going to come out. That for me is where the energy comes from, 100%.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that being able to spot the brilliance in people and help them to see it themselves, that it's life changing, isn't it?
And it's very similar, really, to what you were describing, where you have those people that have that desire to find a new role. And that's essentially the same kind of thing that you're doing for them, but just in a slightly different way, because you're helping them to figure out what's their special value proposition that they can offer, and then articulate that to a new employer. So I think it's, yeah, quite similar in terms of what we both find energizing, as so many of our answers are.
Yeah, I think it's lucky that we're on the same page with so many different things. I think we're yet to find something that we're not quite on the same page for, isn't it?
I'm sure it'll come. Maybe that needs to be something that we aim for in 2026. Let's find a point of disagreement that we can debate on the podcast. Let's go for that.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
So our final question in this section then is, what is one thing you've tolerated this year that you know you shouldn't tolerate going forward? And this, it can be quite a confronting question, but also can really help to shape the stuff that we're going to be talking about in our next episode at the start of next year, where we're going to be talking about what you want for the next phase. So this can be something you've tolerated from others. It can be something you've tolerated from yourself. It could be about the content of your role. This, I think, is really pointing to what makes you feel uncomfortable when it comes to setting a boundary or making a change, because what you've tolerated is effectively your boundaries. And if you tolerate something that you know you really shouldn't, then it's comfortable to sometimes continue to tolerate it until it gets to the point where it really isn't anymore. And so when you're asking yourself that question, it's really about identifying, where's that pain point? What do I really need to do something about? And if I don't do something about it, 3, 6, 9 months from now, nothing else is going to have changed.
Yeah, I think that's a really key one to finish on, isn't it?
So hopefully those questions will prompt some thoughts for you. As I said, we will pop a download with the whole list of them in the show notes so that you can access those. We would love to hear your reflections and what particularly I think some of your successes. That for us is always what gives us a buzz, is hearing people's successes. So please do share those with us. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We have absolutely loved it. You'll have noticed that over the last quarter, we've been at a fortnightly rather than a weekly pace, because the pace of everything else that we're handling has been so busy. So we've been here a little bit less frequently, but we will absolutely still be creating episodes in reflection of those things that you're sending us, the topics that we know are coming up for you. As you're reflecting, anything that you want to share, we will absolutely get those on the list for next year. Thank you for being with us in 2025, and we will be back next time with another episode at the start of the new year.